This is the story of a Christmas I will never forget. I am going to tell you what really happened that night, and I promise, it's not something you'd expect. So listen carefully, because once I start, you won't want to stop. It was Christmas Eve. Snow was falling gently, covering the streets in white. Everything looked peaceful, magical even. But that night, peace was the last thing I found. I was staying at my grandma's house deep in the countryside. My parents were away for the holidays, visiting my aunt in another country. Grandma lived alone in a large old house, the kind with creaky floors and doors that groan when you open them. She was sweet, always baking cookies and telling stories. By the fireplace, I liked it there. It felt cozy, safe. That night, we had hot cocoa, decorated the small tree in her living room, and listened to soft Christmas music on the radio. Around 10 p.m., Grandma said goodnight and went upstairs to bed. I stayed downstairs a bit longer, watching the snow outside the window. Everything was so quiet, like the world had gone to sleep. I was just about to go up when I heard something. It wasn't loud, but enough to make me pause. It sounded like a faint jingle, like small bells. I smiled, thinking maybe it was just the wind blowing through the decorations outside. But then I heard it again, closer this time. Jingle, jingle. I looked out the window, expecting to see maybe a deer or some wind chimes swinging. But there was nothing, just the snow falling. Went upstairs and got into bed, trying not to let my imagination run wild. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind outside, and then, thump. A sound came from the roof. My eyes opened. It was just a thump, but strong, like something heavy had landed up there. I sat up in bed, heart starting to race. My first thought, Santa Claus. I laughed a little at myself, but something didn't feel right. It wasn't the happy kind of thump you'd imagine with Santa and his reindeer. It sounded slow, heavy. Then I heard something moving across the roof, not running, dragging. I held my breath. Whatever it was heading toward the back of the house. That's where my bedroom was, and then scratch. Something scratched against the window pane. I didn't move. I couldn't. My window was on the second floor. There was no way someone, or something, should be able to reach it. Scratch, scratch, tap. Like long nails, tapping on the glass. Slowly turned my head toward the window. The curtains were closed. I didn't want to open them, but a small part of me, the curious part, needed to know. I reached out, hand shaking, and pulled the curtain just a little to the side. There was a face staring back at me. Pale. Hollow eyes. Its skin was gray, almost frozen looking. It had something red smeared around its mouth like blood or maybe paint. I didn't know what it was, but it looked straight at me and smiled. I dropped the curtain and backed away so fast I nearly fell off the bed. I wanted to scream for Grandma, but something inside told me not to. Like if I screamed, it would know. I was really afraid. I stayed there, silent, heart pounding. Then the tapping stopped. I waited for what felt like hours, though it was probably just minutes. I finally got the courage to peek again. Nothing was there, just snowflakes sticking to the window. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the covers pulled up, eyes wide, staring at the window until morning. When Grandma came in to check on me, I told her everything. She didn't laugh. She didn't say it was a dream. Instead, she went pale. She walked over to the window and looked at the glass. Then she reached out and touched something. There were fingerprints. Long, bony fingerprints on the outside of the window. She didn't say much, just told me to go downstairs and stay by the fire. I listened. I sat there, trying to calm down, trying to believe it was over. But it wasn't. Later that day, we heard the radio mention strange reports across the region. People seeing figures on rooftops, windows broken. In one small town, a family had gone missing. Only bloody boot prints left behind in the snow. Grandma finally spoke that night. She told me an old story, something she heard as a child from her own mother, about the Yule visitor, not Santa, not anything jolly. This thing came on Christmas Eve, especially during the coldest winters. It didn't come to give gifts. It came for the lonely, the forgotten, and sometimes the curious. She said it was like a shadow that wore the shape of a man but wasn't human. It fed on fear. And once it knew your name, once you looked it in the eyes, it would come back. I asked her how to stop it. She didn't answer. That night, I refused to sleep in my room. I stayed by the fire again, wrapped in blankets. Just before midnight, the power went out. The fireplace flickered low, and the shadows grew longer. Then, the bells again. Jingle. Jingle. Closer. And then I saw it. At the window. Not outside this time. Inside. Standing in the dark corner of the room, behind the Christmas tree. Its eyes glowing faintly. I froze. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. It tilted its head slowly, watching me. And then, it spoke. Not with a voice, but inside my head. Whispering words I couldn't understand, but they filled me with ice. I don't know how long we stared at each other. It felt like forever. Then, just as suddenly as it came, it was gone. The lights came back on. The fire sparked up again. Grandma came running down the stairs. But it wasn't over. I knew it saw me. I knew it marked me. Christmas never feels the same now. Every year, I sleep with lights on. I never stay alone. And I never ever look out the window after dark on Christmas Eve, because I still hear it sometimes. The soft sound of bells, jingle, jingle, and I know it's still out there, waiting. This story is about a Christmas that turned into a nightmare. I'm going to tell you what happened to me one cold December night. It's not just any Christmas story. It's one you won't forget once you hear it. So, listen closely and don't look away. It was Christmas Eve, and I was visiting a small town with my friends. We decided to spend the night in an old cabin my uncle owned deep in the woods. The cabin was pretty run down but cozy, with a big stone fireplace and wooden walls that smelled like pine and smoke. The snow was falling thick outside, covering everything in a heavy white blanket. We'd spent the day hiking, drinking hot chocolate, and telling stories. When night came, we sat around the fire, singing carols softly and joking about scary Christmas tales. Everyone was in a good mood, except me. I felt a strange chill, not from the cold, but something I couldn't explain. Around 11 p.m., we decided to call it a night. Everyone went to their rooms except me. I stayed downstairs to grab some water from the kitchen. As I walked through the cabin, I noticed something odd. The Christmas tree lights were flickering. I thought maybe the power was unstable because the storm was getting worse outside. Then, I heard it, a soft sound, like whispering, coming from the hallway. It was barely there, so I stopped and listened. At first, I thought it was one of my friends trying to scare me, but the whispers weren't in any language I knew. They were low and strange, almost like chanting. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I shook it off, grabbed the water, and headed back to the living room. But then the whispering got louder. It seemed to be coming from the basement door. A dark wooden door, heavy and old, that no one had used all day. Curious and a bit scared, I walked toward the basement. My heart was pounding. When I reached the door, the whispers stopped. I stood there, hand on the cold doorknob, debating if I should open it. Suddenly, the door creaked open by itself, just a little. I could see a faint light coming from inside, flickering like a candle flame. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, all the way, and stepped down. The basement was dark, cold, and smelled musty. The faint light was from a single candle placed on a wooden table in the corner. But what made my blood run cold was the thing on the table. It was an old, cracked doll. Its face was dirty and cracked, and one of its eyes was missing. The other eye seemed to look right at me. I don't know why, but I felt like the doll was alive. Suddenly the candle flickered out. Darkness swallowed the room. I froze. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy footsteps. I whipped around, but no one was there. I rushed upstairs, slammed the door, and locked it tight. When I got back to the living room, my friends were gone. Called their names, but no one answered. The cabin was silent, except for the wind howling outside. Suddenly, I saw footprints in the snow outside the window. They were fresh, leading away from the cabin, deep into the woods. I grabbed my coat and ran outside to follow them. The footprints were strange, too big to be human, and they twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I followed them, feeling more scared with every step. After a while, I reached a clearing. In the middle was a strange symbol carved into the snow. It looked like a circle with strange lines and shapes inside. And then I heard that whispering again. Only this time, it was all around me. Cold fingers brushed my neck. I tried to run, but my feet felt stuck. I looked up, and standing there was a figure, tall, dark, and shadowy. Its eyes glowed red in the moonlight. It smiled, showing sharp teeth. I screamed and turned to run, but the ground beneath me gave way. I fell into a pit, landing hard on something soft and cold. I couldn't move. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the doll from the basement, sitting at the edge of the pit, its one eye gleaming. I woke up the next morning, alone, outside the cabin. The sun was shining, and the snow was still falling gently. But the footprints and the symbol in the clearing were gone. I never found my friends. And every Christmas since, when the snow falls and the wind whispers, I remember that night. I know the darkness is still out there, waiting for someone to open the basement door again. This story is about a Christmas that went horribly wrong. I'm going to tell you what really happened to my friend Jake and me one cold Christmas Eve. It's not the kind of story you hear at parties or in holiday movies. It's darker. So, if you want, sit back and listen closely because this isn't something you'll forget easily. Jake and I decided to spend Christmas together. Our families lived far apart, and we didn't want to be alone that night. So, we rented a small house in a quiet town called Millbrook, a place surrounded by thick woods and old farms. The house was cozy, with a fireplace, a little Christmas tree, and all the usual decorations. Outside, snow was falling hard, making everything look calm and peaceful. We arrived late in the afternoon, unpacked, and started a fire in the fireplace. We made hot chocolate and put on some Christmas music. The plan was simple: relax, watch some movies, and enjoy the night. But the night had other plans for us. Around 9 p.m., Jake went outside to get some firewood from the shed. I stayed inside, wrapping presents and setting up snacks. The wind was howling outside, and the trees creaked in the cold. After about 20 minutes, I started to feel uneasy. Jake was taking longer than usual. I called his name through the window, but no answer. I stepped outside, the snow crunching beneath my boots, and walked toward the shed. The air was sharp and cold. I shouted again, but still no reply. Then I saw something that stopped me dead. The door to the shed was wide open. Inside, the firewood was scattered all over the ground, but Jake was nowhere to be seen. I called him, again, my voice trembling now. No answer. I ran back to the house, locked the door, and tried calling his phone. No signal. That's when strange things started happening. The Christmas lights on the tree began to flicker on and off. The radio switched channels by itself, only playing static and soft whispering sounds. I tried to stay calm, but the house suddenly felt cold, much colder than outside. I sat down by the fire, waiting for Jake to come back, telling myself it was probably just a joke or that he'd be back soon. But as the minutes passed, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow footsteps. But I was alone, or so I thought. I grabbed a flashlight and crept upstairs, heart pounding in my chest. At the end of the hall was Jake's room. The door was slightly open, and the light from my flashlight fell on something that made my blood run cold. There were handprints on the walls, smudged and dark like someone had scratched them with their nails. The room smelled strange, like something was rotten. I stepped inside and saw Jake's jacket on the bed, but no Jake. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. Behind me, I spun around, but the flashlight flickered and went out. In the darkness, I heard a whisper. Jake. Jake. It wasn't Jake's voice. I fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When the light came back, I saw something standing in the corner of the room. A tall figure, dressed in tattered clothes, its face covered with a dark cloth except for two glowing eyes staring straight at me. I froze. The figure moved closer and I could smell something foul, like decay. "Why are you here?" it whispered, voice hollow. I tried to speak, but no words came out. Then it reached into its coat and pulled out a small wooden box. It opened it, revealing a cracked Christmas ornament. The ornament began to glow faintly, and I felt a cold wave rush through me. Suddenly, I heard a shout from downstairs. "Tom, are you okay?" It was Jake's voice. The figure hissed and vanished instantly. I ran downstairs and found Jake standing there, pale but unharmed. He told me what happened. When he went to get the wood, he saw a shadow moving near the woodshed. He tried to follow, but it disappeared into the trees. Then the shadow appeared behind him and whispered things he didn't understand. He ran to the house as fast as he could. We decided to leave immediately, but as we packed, the house shook violently, like something huge was outside trying to break in. The lights went out, and the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Then we heard it, a chorus of whispers, coming from all directions. The voices called our names, begging us to stay. I grabbed Jake's hand and we ran to the car. As we drove away, I looked back once. The house was dark again, quiet as if nothing happened. But I know what I saw. And every Christmas since, I avoid Millbrook and never forget the night the shadows came calling. Because sometimes, the things that visit on Christmas aren't the ones bringing gifts. This story is about the Christmas that changed everything for me and my cousin Emily. It's not one of those happy, warm stories with snowmen and gifts. No, this one is darker, and I want you to listen carefully because it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas Eve, and Emily and I were staying at our grandfather's old farmhouse. He lived far away in a small town called Oak Ridge, surrounded by thick forests and empty fields. The farmhouse was old with creaky wooden floors and faded wallpaper, but it had a charm to it. Grandfather had passed away earlier that year, and the house was empty except for us. Emily and I decided to make the best of it. We decorated the big pine tree in the living room with old ornaments that looked fragile and dusty. The fireplace was cold, but we stacked wood ready for a fire. Outside, the snow was falling gently, making the world look soft and quiet. That night, after dinner, we sat by the fireplace, talking and laughing, trying to forget how empty the house felt without Grandfather. Emily told me about an old legend she'd heard from the town, about a spirit that appeared on Christmas Eve in Oak Ridge, a spirit that came for those who were alone. I laughed it off, telling her it was just a story to scare kids. But then, the lights flickered. I thought it was just the storm outside causing power problems. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. My breath came out in white clouds, even inside the house. Emily shivered. "Maybe the spirit is here," she whispered, half joking. I didn't answer. We heard a soft tapping sound, like fingers drumming on glass. It came from the window. I walked over and looked outside, but all I saw was snow falling and darkness. I turned back inside, and Emily was staring at the corner of the room, where a tall shadow seemed to move slowly. "Did you see that?" she asked, voice shaking. Before I could say anything, the fireplace suddenly roared to life. Flames jumped up, casting strange shapes on the walls. The room grew darker except for the firelight, and then, from the shadows near the stairs, a figure appeared. It was tall and thin, wearing old-fashioned clothes covered in snow and ice. Its face was pale, with empty eyes that seemed to look right through us. I froze. Emily grabbed my arm tightly. The figure's mouth moved, but no words came out. Instead, a cold wind blew through the room, extinguishing the fire. We were plunged into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, but there was no signal. The tapping on the window started again, louder this time. Then a voice whispered in my ear, "Leave, or stay forever." Emily screamed, and we both ran to the front door, but it was frozen shut. No matter how hard we pulled, it wouldn't open. Panic set in. We heard footsteps upstairs, slow and dragging. The floorboards creaked. Then, from the attic, a loud bang. Emily and I looked at each other, knowing what we had to do. We ran to the back door and found it unlocked. Outside, the snow was knee-deep, and the wind was biting cold. We ran toward the woods, but something was chasing us. A low growl echoed behind. Turned and saw glowing eyes watching us from the trees. Branches scratched our faces as we pushed forward. Suddenly, Emily tripped and fell. I stopped and helped her up, but the eyes were closer now. The creature stepped into the moonlight. It was neither man nor beast, a shadowy figure with twisted limbs and sharp claws. It snarled and lunged. I pushed Emily away and ran. I didn't look back until I reached the main road where a car was passing. I flagged it down, and the driver helped us. We told him about the farmhouse and the creature. He nodded grimly. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. He told us the spirit was an old curse tied to the land and the house, and it came out on Christmas Eve, especially to those alone. Emily and I never went back to that house. Every Christmas since, when the wind howls and the snow falls, I remember the night we ran from the darkness, and I warn anyone who listens, if you find yourself alone in a place like that on Christmas, don't stay. Because some spirits don't want to be forgotten. They want company. Forever. This story is about the strangest and scariest Christmas I've ever experienced. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to my friend Mark and me one cold Christmas night. It's not like the stories you hear around the fire or in holiday movies. This one is real, and it's something I still can't forget. Mark and I had planned to spend Christmas together that year. Our families lived far apart, and we didn't want to be alone on Christmas Eve. So, Mark invited me to his family's old cabin up in the mountains, near a small town called Pinewood. The cabin was surrounded by tall pine trees and heavy snow. It looked perfect for a quiet Christmas, peaceful, calm, and far away from the noisy city. When I arrived late afternoon, Mark was already there. The cabin was warm and cozy inside, with a big fireplace and a Christmas tree decorated with old lights and shiny ornaments. Outside, the snow was thick, and the wind whispered through the trees. We spent the evening eating, listening to Christmas music, and telling stories. Everything felt normal at first, but as the night went on, strange things started to happen. Around 10 p.m., Mark went outside to check the firewood. I stayed inside, warming my hands by the fire. After a while, I noticed the lights flickering, like someone was turning the power on and off. The radio, which was playing soft carols, suddenly switched to static, then to a strange, low humming noise. I called out to Mark, but there was no answer. I grabbed my coat and flashlight and stepped outside into the cold night. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind had picked up, making the trees creak and groan. I walked toward the woodshed where Mark had gone. The door was wide open. The firewood was scattered on the ground, as if someone had been there in a hurry. Called Mark's name again, but only the wind answered. Suddenly, I saw something moving in the trees, a dark shape, slipping between the trunks like a shadow. My heart started pounding. I shone the flashlight in its direction, but it vanished. I ran back to the cabin, locking the door behind me. Inside, the fire had almost gone out, and the room was cold and dark. Then, from somewhere above us, I heard footsteps. Slow and heavy, they were coming from the attic. Mark's family never used the attic. It was always locked. I asked Mark if he had gone up there, but he just looked at me, confused. We decided to check it out together. The attic stairs creaked as we climbed, the wooden steps old and weak. When we reached the top, the attic door was open. Inside, it was pitch black except for the faint glow of a single candle flickering on a dusty table. Next to the candle was a small box carved from wood, with strange symbols etched into the surface. Mark reached out to touch it, but I grabbed his hand. Suddenly, the candle blew out. The attic was swallowed by darkness. We heard whispers, soft voices speaking in a language we couldn't understand. Then, a cold breeze swept through the room, even though the windows were closed. Something brushed past us, cold and dry like dead leaves. I could feel its breath on my neck. We ran down the stairs as fast as we could. Back in the living room, the Christmas tree lights flashed wildly, then died out. The radio burst into loud static again. The room grew icy cold, and our breath came out in thick fog. Then the front door slammed shut. We tried to open it, but it was stuck fast. Panic rose in our chests. We heard a low growl from outside. Mark looked through the window and froze. Standing in the snow was a tall, thin figure. Its skin was pale and cracked like old paper. Its eyes glowed red in the dark. It didn't move like a normal person, more like it was floating. The creature lifted a long, bony finger and pointed right at the cabin. The growling grew louder. Mark grabbed my arm. "We have to get out," he said. But the windows wouldn't open. The creature began to circle the cabin, its steps making no sound on the snow. Then it stopped, at the back door, banging on it with its long nails. The banging turned into scratching, like it was trying to claw its way inside. The house shook. The lights flickered. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything went quiet. The door unlocked with a click. Mark and I didn't wait. We ran out the back door into the freezing night. The creature was gone. We ran through the woods, branches slapping our faces, snow crunching under our feet. Only when we reached the main road did we stop, gasping for air. A car passed by, and we flagged it down. The driver looked worried, but agreed to take us back to town. When we told him about the creature, he didn't seem surprised. He said the cabin was cursed, that many people who stayed there alone on Christmas had strange experiences, some never returning at all. Mark and I never went back. Every Christmas since, when the snow falls and the wind howls, I remember that night. And I warn anyone who listens, if you ever find yourself alone in a cabin in the woods on Christmas, don't ignore the signs. Because sometimes the darkness isn't just outside, it's waiting for you inside.